A researcher wanted to determine the number of televisions in households. He conducts a survey of 40 randomly selected households and obtains the data in the accompanying table. Complete parts A through H below. Okay, so let's click on the data to see what the data looks like. So there is our data. Okay, so the next question is, are these data discrete or continuous? Okay, it says the given data are continuous because they can only have whole number values, or the given data are continuous because they can only take on any real value. Okay, and then the data is discrete because they can only have whole number values, or the data are discrete because they can take on any real value. Well, the answer is the given data are discrete because they can only have whole number values. Let's check our answer, and there is our result. Okay, now it says construct a frequency distribution of the data. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open this up into StatCrunch. Okay, so now let's go ahead and then we're going to go to Stat, and then we're going to go to Tables, and then select Frequency. Okay, and then we're going to put in the column VAR1, and then we're going to select Frequency. Okay, and from here, we're going to go ahead and select Compute. So for 0, we have 1. For 1, we have 13. And for 2, we have 15. So 1, 13, 15. So 1, 13, 15. And let's take a look at the next. Then for 3, 4, and 5, we have 8, 2, and 1. So we have 8, 2, and then 1. Now let's check our result. And there is our answer. Okay, now it says construct a relative frequency distribution. So we're going to open up what we have in our frequency table. So we're just going to go to Options, select Edit, and then all we need to do now is just change the relative frequency option under Statistics, and then select Compute. So now it says type integers or decimals and do not round. So we have 0.025, so 0.025, and then 0.325, so 0.325, and then 0.375, and then 0.2, 0.05, and then 0.025. Check our answer, and there is our result. Okay, now it says what percentage of households in the survey have 3 televisions? Now, this is in a proportion, so it's 0.2. We want to convert this into a percent. So that means that we would take 0.2 and then multiply it by 100%. If we multiply it by 100%, we're going to get the value of 20. So therefore, that would equal 20%. Okay, now it says what percentage of households in this survey have 4 or more televisions? So 4 or more in this case is 4 and 5 because that would be 4 or more. So let's add these two first. So we're going to take the two numbers, 0.05, and then add 0.025, and that gives us 0.75. Now we want to convert this into a percentage. Now remember, we need to multiply it by 100%. So if we multiply it by 100, then that gives us 7.5%. And it tells us to type an integer or a decimal and do not round, so we have 7.5%, and there is our answer. Okay, now they want us to construct a frequency histogram of the data and then choose the correct graph below. Okay, so if you take a look at all the options here, we can see that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are considered the midpoints. So that means that the lower value or the lower limit is 0. Okay, so it's 0, actually not 0, in this case it would be negative 0.5. because negative 0.5 and then 0 and then positive 0.5 and then 1 and then 1.5. So that means we're going to the left here, which would be a negative value. Okay? Now, what is the class width? Well, if we take 0.5 and subtract it from 1.5, that is 1. So we're going to use negative 0.5 as our lower class limit, and then we're going to use 1 as the class width. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and open this up into StatCrunch. We're going to go to Graph and then select Histogram. We know that we have variable 1, which is the number of televisions, okay, which we can come back here and then change this to number of televisions. Okay, and now let's go ahead and go to Graph and then select Histogram, and we're going to select that. Now we're going to go down to Type, since we want a frequency histogram. Now, where do we start at? Well, remember, this starts at negative 0.5, so it's negative 0.5. And then what's our class width? Our class width is 1. Okay, we want the values above the bar so we can determine what that looks like. Okay, and then the x-axis label is the number of televisions. Okay, the y-axis is frequency. And the title, let's see here, we can just call it Table of Television Counts. And then let's go ahead and select Compute. So here is our histogram. So you can see here that even though our class it doesn't show the midpoints on here, the number that's in between those two values is 0. The number that's in between those two values is 1, and so on. So now let's take a look at our histograms and make sure that we can match. Well, so far you can see that we start out with a frequency of 1, and then it goes directly to 13. Well, A and C we can already automatically rule out. Okay, now let's take a look at C. So C starts at 1, 13, 15, 8, 2, and 1, and it's definitely not D, so we're going to select B. And there's our result. Now we want to construct a relative frequency histogram. Well, all we need to do is come back into StatCrunch, and the only thing we need to do is go to Options, select Edit, and then come over here and then just change the type to relative frequency. And now everything else is already inputted from what we've already put in there. Let's select Compute. So now we have our relative frequency, and the only thing that we would need to change is the y-axis label. So the y-axis label would then be relative frequency. And so now, okay, we can rule out A and we can rule out C. And then it looks like it's going to be B, since it's very similar. Well, no, not necessarily B, because it starts low and it's still low here. Looks like it's going to be D. So the histogram is very similar to the frequency histogram, only that the y-axis is now in proportions. So we're going to select D, and then there is our result. Okay, now it says describe the shape of the distribution. So it looks like it starts out high, and then it kind of tails off to the right. So we would say that it is possibly skewed right. Okay, and so the answer is correct.